Hello, hello, hello. It is Dailey at Healing Heart Reiki, and it's been a while since I've done a Tuesday live at 10 a.m. But I thought I wanted to come on today and be just a little bit chatty, catch up a little bit. I know there's so much happening with the Chinese New Year kicking in and the fire horse energy. And it excites me to see that there's a lot more people kind of paying attention to the Chinese zodiac around this. But there's actually something that's been on my mind. And if you come on, definitely feel free to ask questions, jump in, or share your thoughts, um, whether that's live or the replay. So, when I went to Malaysia last year to visit my son, I was so relaxed within the space of a week and a half. Leaving the United States, I found that being in Malaysia, it just felt like 20 pounds of weight came off of my shoulders. And I wasn't sure why exactly at first. I thought, wow, is it the heat? Maybe I just do better in the equatorial environment. Is it just being on vacation? And I'm sure that a lot of those things absolutely factored into it. But coming back to the United States, I had my own realizations, which I shared. And then I've continued to think about it off and on. And I started to say to people, we are over inundated culturally, like with social media, there's just too much, and our brains aren't meant to handle that. But what I realized the other day is that this isn't something that I think is easy to process. It's like when you're a fish in water, you just don't see the air. You don't feel the water. You're like living, right? It's hard to kind of recognize something when it's so prevalent. So I gathered a couple of interesting statistics, and I thought, as I was reading them, I just thought, this is crazy. So the average human today is processing every day the equivalent of about 74 gigabytes of data. And I don't even know what gigabytes means. I was like, what's that? So apparently that would be like you watching 16 movies every day. Now, I don't know about you, but if I watch one movie, I'm pretty full. And and I love movies, maybe I could do two movies. When I was a teenager, I could watch three movies in the theater, but 16 movies each day is the equivalent of what we're putting in and receiving, right? The average adult here in the States processes about 11 hours a day of media and consumes about 7 hours online. And at first I thought this is ridiculous. And then I started looking at the stats on my phone and realized actually there's a lot of little snippets where I might pop on for information and it's become almost unconscious, right? Um, so our processing, we read or are exposed to about 105,000 words per day, which is definitely more than a novel. And the statistics say that basically our process is like 4.5. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, our our process of what we're receiving has gone up 4.5 times since the 1970s with about 5% annual growth, which means that at the digital touches we were receiving in 2010 were approximately 298 little digital something, right? If you think about that today, I know I go to the gas station and there's commercials at the gas station. You go to a grocery store and there's commercials and music and TVs even, depending on the stores you're shopping in. You go to parties. There's just so much, right? And media. You wait in a line at the gas station. I mean, to get your oil change or wherever, and there's media. So 298 digital touches in 2010 has gone up to 4,900 digital touches in 2025. That's crazy. And so, as a friend said, I think a friend actually told me this statistic, Mary, if you're watching, Mary, uh, but I also then saw it again online that today we are being exposed just so much media, so much stimulation that like 500 years ago, like what you would have experienced in the 1500s, like in a lifetime, like if you lived an entire lifetime in the 1500s, that's what we are exposed to in one day, just one day here now, right? So if you think about it, like our brain has definitely evolved, but it hasn't evolved that much, right? And I went down this rabbit hole looking at what happens to a human when they're actually overstimulated, right? What happens to us? And I think these are things that you pretty much already know. Like if you're overstimulated, you withdraw, you begin to shut down, your body goes into fight or flight, right? And you have a hard time processing cognitively, processing new information, making decisions. And generally, people, their sense of well-being goes down, right? And this is something that am seeing a lot of, right? So I'm bringing this up because I've heard this from several friends, from other healing people. I felt it myself that even going on social medias today, I mean, beyond the fact that jumping on, there's like an advertisement every two posts or whatever. Um, there's just so much information, lots of information. And literally, our brains are not meant to receive that level. Like I said, a lifetime for someone in the Middle Ages. And yeah, there was the Enlightenment and all of that, but like, we're not supposed to be receiving lifetimes of information every day. It creates so much static noise in our system, and it does put us into fight or flight or complex PTSD, right? So, um, especially now, there's been this quality over the past few years of the information itself becoming even more triggering. And I think a part of that reason, of course, is that is how our in consumerism, that's how people make their money, right? If they can get a rise from us and we're sharing that information. So there's a lot of information and a lot of it is shock value. And yet, our energy system as energy healers doesn't do well with that. So, what I've started to notice is that a lot of energy healers online are like caught in that cycle and they're perpetuating it without realizing it by sharing constantly triggering information about the news, about things going on. Now, I do I do think it's important to stay informed, right? There are a lot of really critical things going on right now, but it's also a separate skill set, which would be interesting to discuss here in the group, for how to parse out the information that's really shock value information and information that's just raising our hackles and getting us emotionally wound versus information that we can act upon and create immediate changes within our environment, right? The actual realm that we're meant to function in as humans in this life. And so I think I've seen a lot of wonderful healers that are just posting these stressful things because they're stressed and they're angry, and we do need that expression. It's important. But at the same time, if we allow this overstimulation into our system, it actually slows our ability to be responsive to what's actually happening in society right now. And the less responsive we are, then of course, um, things will just continue to get worse, right? So we have to create a shift in our nervous system. We have to allow ways for our nervous system to ground and come down. But a part of that also is figuring out what is important for you on a personal level to filter out that's coming towards you and to take it really seriously as if your life depends on it, right? Like to just clear out. You can snooze information if it's Facebook, figure out, like I go to gas stations where I'm not going to be inundated with television at the actual stand. I make these conscious choices um, about where I go in order to protect the amount of commercials, advertisements, excess stimulation coming in. But also, there has to be this like reorientation and refocusing for each of us on what's important for us in the compass of our life, right? Like, I think there's a part of me that will always be an activist by nature. And, I think that it's important for us as communities to watch out for each other and to share critical information. But I also realize that social media is a construct, it's an astral plane construct. And my real community, my most impactful and important community to me, in terms of like what affects me day to day in my being, are the people that I'm interacting with, right? And sometimes that is on social media. I have a couple of great social media friends, but by far, it's the conversations in private messenger or by email or by phone. And it's the people that I'm seeing every day, whether that's in my office or at home over dinner. It's the people that I'm interacting with that are impacting me on this whole other kinesthetic level, right? So I think it's important to recognize that and bring the conversations that are stirred up through social media into those environments, to have them right there with people over a meal, over breaking bread, at a fire pit, that kind of thing. Now, that's a lot of statistics. And I thought, well, let's not stop there. As energy healers and as Reiki healers, as healing professionals, like, how does Reiki come into all of this? So I thought this was also good information. A lot of this you already know, but healing touch. So if we touch another person, if we hold hands with someone, because there's so many sensors in our palms, right? If we hug someone, give them a high five, any kind of like conscious intentional touch, that has been shown scientifically to release oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, right? Feel good hormones. And in addition to that, it does reduce blood pressure, it slows our heart rate, it eases pain. These are scientifically proven facts about human touch. Um, that healing touch creates a sense of safety for us. It reduces our um, it also returns us, let's see, sorry, my notes, they're like really scratchy. It activates our reward centers, and like through our vagus nerve, it creates this environment within us where we actually feel like things are okay just through human touch. So imagine like if you're receiving Reiki or you're going to a Reiki share, even if you just decide from right now, from this conversation, that this week you're going to shake hands with or hug everybody that you know, that you have connections with when you see them, that's actually going to release positive hormones for your system to help you come down from all of this media overstimulation. That's only proving that it's going to become more intense, right? Obviously, you could just get off of all socials and all of this, but there's still just so much information, right? Now, what about self-touch? So, what about if we're doing our hands-on Reiki practice and we're actually laying hands on ourselves? I've spoken to quite a few of you in the group, like outside of this space, and often you'll say like, "Oh, well, I'm not doing the hands-on all the time, but I am meditating. I'm doing like the Reiki meditations and calling in the light." That still really accounts for a lot. It's still really powerful, and it helps to kind of reset how we're looking at things. You need that meditative and mindful space. But the actual self-touch, the self-touch process, even if it's just your hands on your heart, there have been some interesting studies from that. So you guys know the makeup brand Shiseido. I like their makeup. Um, they've been studying all of this stuff for years because of, putting makeup on. And I thought it was interesting, just one little snippet from them out of the sea of studies that they've done, that self-touch actually deactivates the regions of your brain that are associated with vigilance and um, like like emotional stress, right? So literally, when you lay hands on yourself, any of those pieces of you that have been triggered into fight or flight from that overstimulation that we were discussing from news and from everything, when you lay hands on yourself, it actually releases the those chemicals that deactivate that hypervigilance that you might feel moving through life. And it increases an actual sense of security in your body. And then the National Institute of Health also reports the same, that laying hands on yourself or touching yourself, hugging yourself, patting yourself on the back, doing your Reiki process, all of any of these self-touch will also reduce anxiety. They actually contribute to this sort of internal sense of wholeness in your body. So you start to feel whole again, and it releases the threat response from your system. So those are all of the notes that I have, the statistical notes. But for us as healing practitioners, as people working on our own well-being and our own health, if we are going on, and this is interesting, like for me, I went on social media the other day and immediately the algorithm started to show me super triggering, intense things that were directly from a conversation that I was having while my phone was open in real life with someone else. And it just reminded me like there's such a web of information sharing that's happening all around our own sensitive psyche and psychology, and that large corporations make a lot of money from being able to figure out the psyche of each of us and to use the algorithms to slip right into that to sell to us or to help us to become really addicted to their products so that they can make horizontal sales. So when you're going on socials, if you're seeing a lot of triggering things, you have to let it go. You have to snooze, hide. I don't want to say block because maybe you don't want to block certain people, but maybe temporarily. And remember that you're meant to live your life right where you're at in your town, in your city, and have real conversations with people where there can be a back and a forth and a hug or a handshake or sometimes a fist fight. I don't know, but like that, all of that is incredibly important to the grounding system within your body. Some trigger phrases like, the Epstein files is happening a lot. A lot of people continue to talk about that. It is important. It's important for the victims of those files, and I think victims anywhere and everywhere of any kind of sexual harassment to be able to see now like that there's this rising up in society of people saying it's not okay for us to quietly enable these systems any longer. But also these systems are not just in large corporations, large corporate world. They're in our neighborhoods. Like there's people right up the street that are doing a lot of things that are not good, right? So we've got to take the consciousness from these greater conversations and remember that we can be activated and activist within our own communities in order to create change, right? And ultimately for me, I really believe that change begins, with us, right? We start with healing our own heart, our own mindset. 10 out of 12 women have been sexually harassed or made to feel uncomfortable. So probably if you're listening to this, you probably have had some kind of experience, right? And it takes presencing with ourselves to heal, that mindset. Because otherwise, even if we're fine, even if we figured out how to be safe, we see those things happening around us, and we may be in a really scared or victimized state where we can't stand up for others because it's too painful, right? So I really encourage you during the rest of this month, and as Mercury goes retrograde in a couple days, I really encourage you to take care of your mental health and well-being, to put aside some real time to lay hands on yourself with all of those self-touch stats that we just discussed, right? and to put aside some time to really think about and integrate these ideas around like how you want to hold yourself in relationship to the news that's coming in, where you have the ability to be activist, and also where maybe your nervous system is so fried from it or so wired that you need to step out and rest and protect yourself. And that's not being a failure of society if you choose not to speak up or you choose to step back. You've got to take care of your well being so that you can create the healing changes in your life that you're meant to create. I think that's all. I think I originally was going to name this talk something like the the secret truth right in front of you that's hidden in plain sight, that's affecting your core energy, right? Because here we talk about Reiki and hands-on and all the techniques and calling in the light and the love, but also the reality is, if you're calling in light and you're doing this beautiful like self-healing for 10 minutes or healing on others for 10 minutes, and then you like pop up and you go into the world and then you're like clobbered by, I don't know, 4,900 digital touch points per day. You know what I mean? Like, that's exhausting. Like, that's not sustainable, right? And it absolutely, there are all of these unconscious touch points that are affecting how your energy is radiating in the world. And something as simple as a phone, you know, this beautiful, crazy cell phone, $1,000 phones, crazy. Um, they really do send out waves, right? And these waves are not, they may be invisible to our naked eye, but they really do affect your brains and the electromagnetic force there and the wiring. So we have to be kind of conscious about the space that we're creating for our healing. Okay, so let's bring hands to prayer position. And I want to invite you, just we're going to close out. If you want to, if you're safe to do so, you can close your eyes and just breathe in and out with your hands in prayer position. Just each of the fingertips gently touching. And this helps to stabilize your system. And then we're going to take a note from all of those statistics. Just go ahead and reach around and give yourself a hug. And now we know that this really does make a difference. Just breathing in and out. And tell your system you're safe and you have the ability to curate your experience, your human experience. So hands back to prayer position, just giving thanks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We give thanks to our guides and guardians and allies. And thanks to all of the birds and the insects, the little bees and the butterflies that are pollinating and preparing to help us create a new cycle this spring. Thank you, Spirit, and thank you. Please feel free to share your thoughts, and I will speak to you soon. Blessed be.